Welcome to Small Biz Life, episode 39. 7 simple things you can do to wow your customers.
Does this sound familiar?
Oh my God, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
Welcome to Small Biz Life. Thank you for joining us this week. If you are a previous listener, we appreciate you checking in with us every week. And if you're a new listener, thanks for checking us out. My name is Kristen Ingram.
And I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And we are husband and wife small business owners who are taking you on this journey through the small biz life, because we know that small business isn't 9 to 5. It's nights and weekends. And we're trying to help you juggle everything that's included in the small biz life.
And you will be surprised to find the things that end up in your hands at times.
Like kitties?
Like kitties.
Who are helping us record today. So you might hear a little bit of kittiness in the background of this episode. So, it's kind of funny because it's the little things in business that really wow customers. Mm-hmm. And we had an experience this weekend. We hired a painter.
Yeah.
And this kind of made us really think about, some of the little things that we can do to wow our customers, create raving fans, and make sure that they come back and they support us again in the future.
And I think one of the mistakes I've made, and I believe a lot of small business owners make, is they focus so much on trying to find that big thing that will help get them to that next level of revenue, that they don't practice the fundamentals, which is something we've talked about before. But really, that is key in all things. And most of these things cross all businesses.
Right. And these are really simple things that any business owner can do, whether you have a storefront, whether you're an online business, whether you're product-based or service-based. This is something that we can all do. Mm-hmm. In order to improve our relationships with our customers.
Yep. And it's something that we can always improve upon as well.
Right. What's the first thing?
Answer the phone.
Exactly. So, I think this is especially true if you have a storefront business or a service-based business. People don't want to get an answering machine.
Yeah.
So if you can answer the phone, and I think we all understand that sometimes it's not possible, mm-hmm. but if you can answer the phone, answer the phone.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that's one way that we show current and potential customers that, hey, we're there for you when you need us.
Yeah.
And especially if you have posted hours. Mm-hmm. So if you say, that our office is open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., there should be somebody there to help answer the phones for you.
And I mean, it's even okay to say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm with a customer. Can I please put you on hold?
Yeah. Or can I call you back in 5 minutes?
Yeah.
So that's the beautiful thing with call waiting, right? Is that you can switch over. And, I think most customers are really good when you say, oh, can you hold on 1 second? And they'll say, oh, sure. Click over. Talk to the other person for a minute, let them know that you'll call them back.
Yeah. And, sort of along the lines of the phone too, understand, prioritize your phone calls. If you're chatting to an old high school friend or someone you haven't talked to in a while and it's not business related and it's during your business hours, the customer should come first.
Right. Exactly. So, I've done that before where I've been on the phone, with a friend, or even I've just been chatting with a client and kind of catching up with them and it wasn't really business related.
Yeah.
And I'll look at the caller ID and I'll say, oh, listen, I really need to take this call. It's been great chatting with you, mm-hmm. And I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. No, and I've known people who've been going to get help from someone and have literally been asked, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the phone. And then they sit there, like literally standing in front of the person, listening to them on a personal phone call drives people crazy.
Yeah. So, be really careful with that. So the second one, and this goes back to, if you can't answer the phone, or if people are contacting you via email or, Facebook Messenger, whatever medium they're using to contact you, respond in a timely manner.
Yeah.
And I think that differs what's considered timely depending on the type of business you have.
And, if you have time to take the call, even if it's not during your normal business hours, do it. I mean, that's literally how the guy who we hired this weekend got the job, was within 5 minutes of us contacting him. And as I'm trying to get other people to come out to quote the job, he's called me back in the middle of it trying to set up an appointment. To me, that tells me he wants my work.
Right. And the cool thing with him, the reason we hired him, he offered to come out that night to look at the job.
Yeah.
But he came out the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And, he was eager to quote the job. He wanted to get the work done in a quick time frame. But that response, he was the first person to respond back to us.
Yeah.
And it was great, because typically with contractors, and if you're a contractor listening to this, respond in a timely manner.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a contractor, and that's an electrician, a plumber, any sort of service provider, really, this even goes into like IT repair.
Yeah.
If you respond in a timely manner, customers are going to notice that, because most people in your industry don't do that.
Yeah. And I mean, even if you're not necessarily looking for work, if you have advertising out for work, it's one of the reasons you should know the people in your industry, know who you're going to outsource your work to in case you get too much at one period of time.
Right.
And you're not going to make as much money on it, but you've helped the customer solve a problem, and you'll get at least something out of it. If nothing else, potentially they'll come back to you later on.
Right. So you want to make sure that you know what is considered timely for your industry. So if you're in something where, you're in the trades and somebody's furnace breaks, or their air conditioning breaks, or their dishwasher breaks, or their computer breaks, and it's a business, they're going to want somebody who can respond fairly quickly.
Yeah, especially if it's heat or AC. That usually happens when people need heat or AC. And if you don't call them back very quickly, you're not going to get the work.
Exactly. Okay. So, it's funny how just responding back quickly can really help you grow your business.
Yeah.
Because the contractor that we work with this weekend, we said, can we have some of your cards? Because people in your industry don't call people back.
Yeah.
And since you do, we want to let other people know. Yeah. So that's huge. The third one, and this is one of my biggest pet peeves ever. So when I was a young accountant, one of the things that really bothered clients was when accountants showed up late.
Yeah.
They kind of showed up, 15 minutes late, 20 minutes late, whenever they got there. And I just remember how much that bothered clients. And I had a number of people say, it feels like my time isn't valued. Right. And you've probably experienced this. Like if you've been to the doctors are terrible with this.
Have you ever had a cable person come out to service your house?
Oh my God. Yeah.
I mean, definitely where we live, it's like, okay, we're going to give you a time frame of next week. So can you be home next week? Maybe not quite that bad. It feels that bad.
But you know how it is that when you've put time aside to meet with somebody and they're late or they don't show up, and think about how that makes you feel.
Yeah.
Don't do that to your customers.
And there are legitimate times in your life where you're going to be late. If you are going to be late, the thing I suggest that you do is have the number on hand. So if you're not at the office, you can call the number and say like, I'm sorry, something came up. I'm going to be there at this time. Is that still okay? Verify with them and apologize profusely. But contact them if possible before the actual meeting time.
And do that even if you think you might be late.
Yeah.
So I've done that with clients before where, okay, let me start off with, whenever I book an appointment with a client, I always put their cell phone number or their business number into the appointment.
Yeah. I do the same thing. Yeah.
So that way, if I am on the road, if I get lost, if traffic's bad, if I'm running behind, when I leave for a client, I always leave to get there 10 minutes early.
Yeah.
And that's just so in case there's bad traffic, there's an accident, the lights don't like me that day, whatever it is, I'm still on time.
Or if I'm out doing multiple appointments, even if I know where someone's location is, I'll have the address in my appointment as well too. That way, if I'm not sure if it's the best way when I get to my appointment before, I'll actually, before I go in, I'll be there a few minutes early. I'll take a few seconds to check out how long it's going to take for me to get to the next appointment.
Right. And that way you know what time you have to leave.
Yeah.
And, one thing that I've done is I book downtime between appointments. So that way, even if an appointment runs a little bit long, I know that I'll still be okay. Sometimes maybe when you're booking that downtime and you've got like 20 or 30 minutes in between, I'll go find a park down the street from the client.
Yeah.
Or I'll go into a Starbucks and I can answer emails in that 20 minutes. I can do some social media in that 20 minutes. I can find other things to do to fill that time.
And now here's another tip. Timely is not just bad when you're late. Don't show up an hour early. Don't show up 15 minutes early. And if you are kind of early, like Kristen said, take a few minutes not too far away and do a few things on your phone, check your email, whatever. But showing up too early is bad too.
Right. So if it's a business client, I'll sit in their parking lot, or if I know that they have a waiting area, then I'll sit in the waiting area. But you want to make sure that you're being early is better than being late. You just don't want to be super early.
Yeah.
So, and you have to kind of know the circumstance. If it's an individual client and you're going out to see them, you don't want to show 15 minutes early, because typically, think about it. If you've ever been that person, you're running around like a crazy person trying to get things picked up. Maybe you're doing some last minute vacuuming before the person comes over. So if you're going to be super early, I've actually, again, because you've got the client's phone number, call the client and say, hey, listen, my last appointment finished up early. Would it be okay if would you want to start early?
Yeah.
I mean, if not, I've got some things I can do, but if that would work for you, I can come see you early.
Most definitely. Especially if you're booked on the road all day, it won't hurt you to ask. But ask. Don't just show up over 15 minutes early and expect for them to be glad to see you and welcome you. And some might, and maybe even the majority might, but the ones that are turned off by it will be very turned off by it.
Yeah. So going back to what I was saying before, even if I think I might be a couple minutes late, I will call the client. And that's literally like if I'm supposed to be there at 9 and I think I'm going to be there at 9:03, I will call the client from the road and say, listen, I'm going to be 5 minutes late. I'm very sorry. I got stuck in traffic. Is that okay?
Yeah. And that really, the major reason is you're showing them that they are more to you than just an appointment, that you value them. You value their time.
Right. And I think this kind of piggybacks off of what we have for number 4. Number 4 is under promise and over deliver.
Yes.
That's why if I think I'm going to be 2 minutes late, I will call a client to let them know. And a lot of times it's funny because I will show up at like 9 o'clock on the dot and they'll be like, oh, you weren't late. That's great.
Yeah.
They'll notice little things like that.
If you're doing a project for them or delivering product to them and you think it will take, let's say, 2 hours of time, beef on 25% if you charge hourly. Because that way you can come back and bill them for 2 hours instead of 2.5 hours. And they're going to be like, whoa, this is less than I thought. And that's good. More than they thought will be bad. And whenever you're delivering, especially services to people, even like it could be a custom product for them, I consider that a service, even though there's a product involved. Whenever you do that, there are always going to be things that come up. It's like, for the most part with what I do, I can pretty well estimate the time it's going to take me to do bits and pieces of the application. And still, after all the years I've been doing it, I'm almost always wrong. So add on a little bit, of time, for delivery purposes and expect there to be a mistake, even if you're not charging them for that time, and get it to them early, get it to them quick.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like, even when I pick up a tax return, I'll tell a client, well, based on what I have in the office, it's probably going to take me 2 weeks to get this finished. But then I know in my mind that I'm actually going to deliver it to them next week.
Yeah.
So if you tell them 2 weeks and you get it to them in a week, you have a happy customer.
Yeah.
If you tell them 2 weeks and you get it to them in 3 weeks, you have an unhappy customer.
Yeah. And another circumstance of the projects too is one of the things I always remembered from working at UPS was they said, if you deliver someone's package late on
Christmas.
Well, any day besides Christmas, they're going to be upset with you. If you make the Christmas present for their kid late, they will never forgive you.
That's right. You know, so that's what we mean when we say under promise and over deliver, is even if you have a date in mind or you have a price in mind, make sure that you give yourself some extra time or some room in the billing.
Yeah. And be honest with them about it when you get the proposals too, because some of the people are going to be smart enough to have an idea of how long it should take you to do it. And if, you add on 5 weeks extra time for something that should take you a week, they're going to maybe be put off by that. So, keep it a reasonable amount of time and be honest and say, there's 25% of the time in case other stuff comes up. Sometimes there's an interchange. Like maybe you don't get back to me when I have the questions ready for you to help finish up what we're doing, or for whatever reason, there's a lightning storm and the power goes out for 2 days. Be honest with them, and then just bill them honestly when you're done with the project.
Right. And, I think it's important to be realistic with your customers about your expectations for what they will need to do so that you can get the timeline working the way that you've promised. So you kind of have to tell clients, listen, I can get it done by this date as long as you do this, this, and this.
And if there's a back and forth, which for many services there are, say, okay, I'll need feedback from you here and here, and I'll need you to get back with me. Do you think 24 hours will be enough time? And work that out with them, because inevitably that will cause problems when you're working with other people to help even provide them services that they really do need.
Well, one thing that I found with a lot of CPAs, they will pick up or they will allow clients to drop things off whenever they want. And so CPAs will have this huge backlog of work. And so it might take them 4 to 6 weeks to get a tax return done because they just have so much work in their office.
Yeah.
One thing that I've done with my firm is I pick up work and get it done within the next week. And then I will book clients out farther if I think I can't turn something around in a week.
Yeah.
So I don't like having things like sitting in my office for weeks on end.
Yeah.
I would rather say, you know what? Why don't we meet in 3 weeks and then I can get your tax return right back to you? Because I think a lot of times what happens with attorneys and accountants and other, I've even seen this with marketing people and web people, is that they work so hard on sales to get all this work in. And then they have all this work and they can't get it done in a timely manner. So you might even say, hey, listen, with all the work I have, I'm not going to get this back to you for 6 weeks. That's not going to make your client happy.
No.
But if you say, hey, listen, I can meet with you in 4 weeks and then we can get your project moving, the client's only thinking about, okay, well, they've had it for 2 weeks. That's not a long time.
Yeah.
You can deliver it on the same date, but have had it for 6 weeks. And the client's like, my God, it's been 6 weeks. What's going on? Why don't I have it? So that's a really good strategy anytime you're doing project management, is not to get all the work in at the same time. So just know what your constraints are and what work you can get done in a timely manner, and book your pickup appointments or your intake appointments so that you can get the work done in a timely manner. This is one thing that I think a lot of businesses are really terrible about. Follow up.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we do work for a client, whether it's cutting their hair for the first time, whether it's doing work around their house, whether it's providing a service, and we never follow up.
And this is one of those things too, where you got to kind of play it by the value of the customer to your business, in the order of how timely you do it or how personal you do it. But if you're charging a lot of money to people, especially those people, get back to them, give them a reasonable amount of time to be able to digest the work you've done for them and get back and just say, hey, I just want to follow up to make sure everything worked out with that. That means a lot.
Right. So if you're, we'll use two different businesses that we've run. So like if you're building a website for somebody, you can follow up in a couple weeks and say, hey, is everything laid out? Is everything working okay?
Have you noticed any weirdness with your site?
Right. Are you getting the kind of traction you want with the website? Is there anything that you need to change? And of course, that's additional billable time, right? So you're also kind of drumming up some business with that. See if there's anything else you can do to help them.
Yeah.
In my field, a lot of the follow-up I do is, I'll send an email saying, did you get your refund? Did your payment come out of your account? Do you make your estimated tax payments? So it's nice. No. And the answer a lot of times is no. In my field, I have a lot of opportunity to follow up with customers to see if they are doing something that I recommended or that the tax process is moving the way it should be.
And you can use this to your advantage too. One of the things, especially if you're working online, you're always looking for are testimonials. And a course I took, I don't know, probably a year or so ago, was very clever with that, because what he did was he reached out after the course had been completely released and asked people essentially to take a survey to help him improve his course. And then at the end of the survey, the final question was, do you mind, if I use any of this as testimonials? And then he didn't necessarily use anything I gave him as a testimonial, but he had permission to either do it or not based off of my feedback. So if he got something that he wanted as a testimonial, he then had the right to not only follow up with me and make me feel like I'm getting to give my input back on the service he provided. But then at the very end of it, he's also being able to help fill out his referral page.
Exactly. So that's a really good way to touch a client again, to make sure that they're 100% happy, because sometimes clients aren't happy and they won't tell you that.
Yeah.
And you don't know that there's something that needs to be fixed.
I'm that guy.
Yeah, you're that guy. So you might think that the customer's happy, they'll give you referrals, and then they're telling all their friends, well, there was this thing and it never got fixed, and you don't know that that's the case. So follow up, be proactive, and if there is something wrong, fix it.
And that does happen, and I'd rather have something wrong made right. Granted, it's always best if a service can be delivered flawlessly, but we're humans. Whether we create products or we're delivering a less tangible service, we can always be better. And if there's something that you really believe is validly a problem with what you've delivered to them, fix it.
Exactly. So the next one is to reach out occasionally. Now, there's a fine line with this.
Yeah.
Because a lot of contracting companies, if they ever do work for you, they will reach out to you like once a month for the rest of eternity. And that's too much.
Yeah.
Okay. That will drive you crazy. And they're like, do you have another job? Is there something else you want done? Is there, can we, maybe, is there? That drives me crazy. There's one contractor around here that I think they call us like once a month, every month. And I finally told them, like, okay, look, maybe once every 6 months. Okay. Or we're really not in the market to have anything done.
Yeah.
Or, God, you've just annoyed the hell out of me at this point. I'm done.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because I spoke with a contractor yesterday that we had asked for some information from, and we were looking to get our kitchen redone. And so the woman was really nice. She's like, look, we really don't want to, bother you. if you're not interested in having the project done, or maybe this is something you're going to put off, just let us know and we can contact you at that time. And I said, you know what? I think that's great. And I really appreciate that. Why don't you contact me next May? Because that'll be after tax season is over. That's when we start doing home improvement projects around the house. And she was like, great, I will update my system. You will not hear from us again until May of 2017. And I was like, wow.
And the last two in general really make me want to, the thing that ties them together is knowing your customers. And, you have to know how valuable your customers are to you. It's good to know how much money you make from your customers. Those are your valuable customers. And you might like some other ones, but if they never buy from you or they buy very infrequently, that's not the people you're reaching out to. That's not the people you want to know. There's a type of software called customer relation management, and there's all kinds of it. And it ranges anywhere from basically you working a lot and stuff that you already own, or spending way, way, way too much money. But the thing is, you need something to where after you meet with your clients, you can take a few notes down, like, oh, wait, we talked about their kids. Let me make a note of that. How old are their kids if I know that? Just track the basic information of your client. And the more important they are, when you call them to follow up, you can also say, oh, I just realized little Jimmy, he must be getting around time to graduate from high school. How's that working out? And those kind of touches are, to me, very powerful, I think. And I've seen people, I know people who were very good at that. And it would just knock the socks off the people. I mean, they did it with their employees. Some of the guys I knew were just really, really good at doing that. And it always just impressed the heck out of me.
Well, okay, so let's look at two different examples of how you can reach out occasionally effectively. So if you're in the computer repair business and you know that your clients have kids, right? So the middle of August, I would be reaching out and saying, hey, listen, I know it's back to school. Your kids have been home all summer. They probably put a lot of junk on your computers. This is a really good time for you to have a cleanup on those computers. We'll get them running faster for you. And that way, when they go back to school, right, and they really need those computers to be working for them, they'll be all nice and cleaned up.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a really good idea for something like that. For a marketing company, you want to know when your clients are going to have their big marketing pushes. If a client says to you, we're going to launch a new product in March of 2017, I would be contacting them in January and saying, hey, look, I know that you're launching this new product. I just wanted to reach out to you and see if there's any help we could provide you in making sure that this launch is successful.
Yeah.
Or if this is a retailer and Christmas is their big push, reach out to them in October and say, hey, is there anything we can do to help make sure that we maximize your sales for the holidays?
And here's a hint for anyone who works with people whose business is seasonally based around Christmas. Maybe it's transportation, maybe it's retail. Lots of businesses make their profit in December. If you're not on the radar in October, you will not get checks from them in December.
Exactly. So think about the kind of customers you have. For example, if you're a web developer and you work with landscapers, I would be reaching out to landscapers in January and saying, hey, listen, are there any updates that you want to make to your website before busy season starts?
Yep.
Because you have to know when is the appropriate time to reach out to your customers.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many software vendors contact me during tax season. I have a blacklist of companies that I will never work with because if you call me twice during tax season, so if I say, hey, listen, it's tax season, reach out to me in May and we'll look at your product, and you contact me again during tax season, I am never working with your company.
Which is extra funny because a lot of these companies are actually people who are targeting accountants.
Right. This is like companies that provide continuing education for accountants, tax software, cloud services for accountants, websites for accountants. I understand that you need to sell stuff all year long, but now is not the time.
Ain't gonna happen.
Not right now. Things like that, knowing your customers knowing good demographic information about them. And that's where like a CRM can really help you.
And if you can't afford that, go into your Gmail or your Outlook, wherever you store your contact information. There's usually a notes field. At least do that.
Yeah. And that's a really good way, if you don't have the money for a CRM and you don't need something complicated, that's a really good way to do it. You can actually put this in QuickBooks as well, or you can put in FreshBooks or Xero, whatever accounting
someplace
system.
where you already have information about your clients. And actually, accounting software is really good too, because then you can do reports to say, okay, who do I get the most money from? Let me give them the appropriate love. Let me go in and verify. Wait, they're an accountant. I forgot that, but it tells me in here that they're an accountant, and I should not call them between January and April.
Right, and that's where like in QuickBooks, you can actually assign a customer type. So you could have a type that's individuals with kids.
Yeah.
And then you can pull a report of those customers and say, okay, if I'm the computer repair company, these are the ones I'm going to contact in August.
Yeah.
So there's a lot you can really do with that without purchasing a CRM.
Yeah. And especially when you're starting off small business, especially if you're like a lifestyle enterprise, you're not trying to grow into like, the next big thing online. And if you start getting there, you'll have to convert over at some point. But when you're starting off, or if you really don't want to be that giant of a business, find a way either in your accounting software and your contact software to be able to store the notes in your clients.
Exactly. Even if you're doing coaching and like you work with accountants, you can reach out to them in November and say, hey, listen, I know that you're going into a really stressful time. So if you want me to coach you through some productivity tips during tax season, or just check in on you to make sure you're keeping up with the work that you need to do, my thing is usually 2 months before either the busy season starts or the project starts. That's when you want to be reaching out.
And worst case, there's always Excel or Access for quick things depending on your skill levels. You can put things together pretty quickly, very sortable, very manipulatable. Sometimes the problem with doing it in an email, depending on how good the email is, it might be hard to get to that information.
Exactly. And so the last one, and this is different than reaching out, because reaching out is more about their needs and knowing when their needs arise. The last one is keeping them updated.
Yeah.
So this is something and this is a good use of like an email list. Remember, don't put people on your email list without their permission, but this is a good way to be able to reach out to people if you're in IT and there's a computer update or there's a major virus out there that they need to update something in order to be able to avoid that. As an accountant, I always send things out reminding all my clients about quarterly estimated tax payments, if there are major changes in the tax law. If you are a marketing coach and there's a major change to Facebook or Twitter, those are good things to update your clients. It's funny because I talk to people and they say, well, I want to have a newsletter, but I don't know what to write about. In every single industry, there are changes. Even sometimes it's, new ways of looking at productivity. And the more we understand about the brain, the more we figure out how people respond to different productivity techniques. That's an update.
Or you might say, well, I'm a landscaper. How does that work for me? Same exact thing. Seasonally, you're getting ready to roll out. You go to your suppliers. You start noticing there's a bunch of, let's say, bluestone all over the place. So now you're going through all your old photographs of projects you've done with bluestone. You're sending those out saying, hey, if you're looking for deals with bluestone, this is the year to do it to get the most for your money. So I can help you save some money. If you want to do bluestone, here's some samples of work I've done.
Well, and I think with landscapers, it's super easy because most of us have no idea what we're supposed to do with our lawn or when we're supposed to plant things. And if you send out updates that say, this is the time you should be planting these kind of things, or this is when you should be putting down grub control. Well, I'll tell you.
Planting your seeds for next season or this season or whatever.
Right. And it's funny too, because I don't want to put down grub control, but if you remind me to do it, I'm probably going to call you and say, hey, could you make sure that gets down on my lawn?
Yes. And we had another contractor who made money this year because they called us to ask us if they wanted to do that, and neither one of us had even thought about it.
Right. So, I mean, these are like the kind of things that as you're keeping people updated for things that they should be doing, it's like a lot of times when I email people and I say, it's time to make your next estimated payment, I'll have a lot of people come to me and say, you know what, my income's a lot higher or my income's a lot lower. Can we just look at my estimates and make sure they're okay?
And another thought too is a lot of times certain types of services you sell are chained together optimally. And so, offer them in bundles, make it easy for them to give you money to do those services that help you plan out your season. Maybe, if you're like the landscaping people, they're like, we do all of these different sprays for you. If you prepay or agree to all of them now, maybe there's a discount involved. Those kind of things incentivize people like me to do it. You don't have to recontact me every time that the next spray has to go down too.
Well, the thing is too, it's like with something like that, it saves you money on billing.
Yeah.
Because I know that everything's already paid for the season. I don't have to have somebody that's sending out bills for every one of these and then has to process all the payments for all these. Rather than doing 6 payments, it's one. So sometimes it's worth doing, a 5% or a 10% discount